Hi and welcome to part 3 of workshop number 1. And in this video, we are going to tackle exactly how we are going to lower those insulin levels and increase the ketone levels. Just a little bit of a reference for you. You can pull out the low carb guidelines here, and everything that I will be going through in this video is in those guidelines point by point. So it's something that you can refer back to after this video in case you forget things or just need that little reminder. So the first thing that we are going to look into is the when component. Time restricted eating is going to come into this, a little bit of intermittent fasting. Try not to get too stressed out with what I'm going to be saying. I know for some of you this is a big leap, diving straight into the deep end, but we're just going to tackle this one day at a time. Listen carefully to all the information, and hopefully by the end of this video you are feeling confident about moving forward with everything that I recommend here. So, the when component. Let's begin. Every Monday and Tuesday, you are going to fast for 24 hours. So what that means is that you'll have dinner on Sunday evening, and we'll go through exactly what that dinner is going to look like in a minute, in the what component. And then you are not going to eat until dinner on Monday night. You'll then have dinner on Monday evening, and then you'll go again all the way through until dinner on Tuesday evening. So 2 consecutive day, 24-hour fasts is what we're going to be doing. Some important points about this fast. These are 0-calorie fasts. There are many fasting protocols out there. Some include things like broth. There are also fat fasting protocols where you can have things like bulletproof coffees and cream in your coffee. But in this challenge, this is a 0-calorie fast. So what can you have during this period? You can have anything that doesn't have calories in it. And that includes water, mineral water, sparkling water, black tea, black coffee, herbal tea. Those are pretty much all the things that you can have during this period. The other things that you need to remember when you're fasting, and I encourage you to go at some point and listen to the video that I've made about salt. But salt is so important. And in the video that I've made about salt, I go into why it's important and why you should feel comfortable eating salt, etc., etc. But in terms of the how to fast, it is really important that you have 2 teaspoons of salt every single day during this challenge. It's not just the fasting days, but it becomes really important on the fasting days to include that salt because it's difficult to get the full 2 teaspoons in at just one meal, which means you most likely have to add a little bit of salt to the water that you're drinking. And just adding it to a level that you can't really taste it. So a tiny pinch into a glass of water, you can't really taste the water, but by the end of the day, you might have had, almost a teaspoon, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, and that's added to your requirements for the day. I can't stress how important adding salt during these fasting days and also on other days is, so please make sure you do this. A little tip for doing this is to take 2 teaspoons of salt out, put them into a container, and by the end of that day, you make sure that you have had everything that's in that container. Fluid is also really important. So I said you can have some water and tea and coffee, but it's actually really important that you do drink enough. And enough is going to be according to your thirst. So if you're feeling thirsty, please drink. And you will most likely become more and more thirsty as you fast, and particularly in the initial stages of this challenge, which is very normal. So listen to your thirst and drink accordingly. So, Monday and Tuesday, it is important that we fast on consecutive days for best results. That is what we're aiming for. And ideally, we're all doing this on Monday and Tuesday. That way, everyone is always fasting together on the same day of the week, and we can all support each other better in this way. Of course, if on the odd occasion you are unable to fast, say on a Monday, you have something on at work, a lunch or whatever, and then you do Tuesday, well, just make sure you then do Wednesday. So it's 2 consecutive days that you are aiming for, but most weeks you are going to try for Monday and Tuesday. A final comment on the 24-hour fasts. Will they be difficult? You might be freaking out a little bit right now. Yeah, they will be a little bit difficult. You might feel a bit hungry. You might feel a little bit weak and tired. And maybe you're not able to complete the full 24 hours initially. You know, are you a complete failure? Of course not. If you get to 16, 17, 18 hours, whatever it might be, give yourself a great big pat on the back and you'll try again the next time. And I promise that these will get easier and easier. So by week 3, week 4, you will be fasting like a pro and it will be so easy, you'll wonder what you ever worried about. But please don't give up. If you find that you can only make it, to mid-morning on the first day, at least you've given it a go. And then you're going to push it out by another hour and another hour. And each time you fast, it will get better and better. So now we move into the rest of the week. Wednesday to Sunday. For the remainder of the week, you want to make sure that you have a minimum overnight fast of 13 hours. So if you finish eating dinner at 7 p.m., say on Tuesday evening, then the earliest you should have breakfast on Wednesday morning is 8 a.m. So a minimum of 13 hours. If you're not particularly hungry, and I'll speak about this in a minute, you might go 14 or 15 hours. That is perfectly fine. But a minimum of 13 hours is what we are aiming for. Next, there is no snacking during this challenge. There is a maximum of 3 meals per day because you are not snacking. Or might not even call them meals, but 3 times that you eat, you put something into your mouth, a maximum of 3 times per day. You can always have the no-calorie stuff between meals, the black tea and coffee, water, but anything with calories in it, a maximum of 3 times per day. Now, I say a maximum 3 meals per day, and I can't stress the importance of this next guideline. And my next guideline says, only eat when hungry. Therefore, if you are not hungry, don't eat. I know that right now some of you are probably freaking out and you're thinking, oh my God, I'm like hungry 24 hours a day. This is all going to change. This will all change when your insulin starts coming down, your ketones are coming up, you're eating adequate protein and fat. I promise you that your hunger is going to be way better controlled, and so much more controlled that you're probably going to start waking up not hungry and not wanting to eat until 11, 12, 1, 2 o'clock. And is that okay? Is what you might be thinking right now. And yes, it is okay. 100% it is okay. Some days you might wake up and feel hungry and have breakfast, but then you might not feel hungry until dinner. And is that okay? Absolutely, that is okay. A key component of this challenge is really getting in touch with your hunger. If we can listen to and respond to our hunger signals appropriately, we are setting ourselves up for long-term success when it comes to our nutrition. So important to understand and listen to your hunger signals. And I know at first this can be quite challenging and something that we're not accustomed to, but the more we do it, the better we will get at it. So just remember, only eat if you are hungry. Now, there is a second resource that I'm going to reference right now, and this is the Low Carb Challenge Meal Plan Guide. And what I want to emphasize here is that this is a guide. It is a visual representation of everything I have just gone through. It shows you that on Monday and Tuesday you will be fasting and only eating dinner. It also incorporates a minimum of 13 hours overnight on the other days of the week, and it gives you a few meal ideas. What I want to point out though is that this is just a guide. If you truly are listening to your hunger and responding appropriately and accordingly, then your week is going to pan out very differently from Wednesday to Sunday, and it might not look anything like this meal plan at all, and that is totally okay. This meal plan is just here to give you an idea of how things all fit together and how things might turn out, but they most likely will be different because of your own personal hunger levels. So please only use this meal plan as a guide. The same goes for the meals that I have suggested here. I'm going to go through in a second what to eat, and this will tell you how to put meals together. The recipes will also offer you ideas. So if I've put down chicken salad for lunch and you're not a fan of chicken, well, then you're going to have something else, and that's totally fine as long as you follow my recommendations in regards to what we're eating, which we'll go through in a minute. So that covers everything relating to when we are needing to eat. And now we want to go on to the what to eat. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to discuss here is fluid and electrolytes. And I've already mentioned how important fluid, and when I say electrolytes, the main thing I'm talking about here is sodium or salt, and I've touched on that already as well. Fluid. We are drinking to thirst. There have been many recommendations around how much fluid you should have in a day, 2 liters, 3 liters, 8 glasses of water, whatever it might be. The key and what science tells us right now is that we should be drinking according to our thirst. And that stands for this challenge. What you will find is when your insulin level starts coming down, you will be going to the toilet a little bit more frequently, and therefore your thirst will be increased. And so you might feel more thirsty and want to drink more regularly, and that is totally fine. Now, what happens here as well is that when you're going to the toilet more frequently, you are losing more salt or more sodium, and hence the importance of my recommendation to get that 2 teaspoons of salt into you each and every day. So make sure you are vigilant about that you have that little container with the 2 teaspoons every single day, whether you're fasting or you're eating. By the end of a 24-hour period, you have had that amount. Okay. Now, the essence of what you will be eating fits underneath my most favorite acronym, which is JERF. And JERF stands for Just Eat Real Food. And really, that is the essence of what this challenge is all about. So, what is real food? Well, real food is to me, anything that is available to us in nature. So if we were cavemen running around, what was available to us then? That is real food. Was it growing in the ground? Did we pick it from a tree? Was it running around in the pasture? That is real food, not packaged, processed stuff that came out of factories and manufacturing plants. Now, if we can just eat real food, we will be well on our way to achieving lowered insulin and increased ketones. Why? Well, because when we just eat real food, our diet naturally becomes lower in carbohydrate and higher in protein and fat. And that is what we are trying to achieve. However, in this challenge, we are taking this concept of JERF a little bit further and setting a few more boundaries. And this is where the green, orange, and red list come into play. Now, really, these three lists, or really the two, the green and the orange, are going to be your Bible for the next 6 weeks. Constantly reference them so that you know that you are on track. My suggestion is that you print a few copies out in color so that you can reference them often and that you can also become more and more familiar with these lists. These lists are my way of helping to make low carb really easy for you. At the start of this, I promised that you would not have to weigh or measure food, count carbs, count calories, and it is these lists that will allow me to keep this promise to you. For a little bit of background and to put this all into context for you, the average Australian, following a standard Australian or Western diet, will be consuming about 250 to 300 grams of carbohydrate per day. A lot. In order to get the desired result of lowered insulin levels and increased ketones, the average person needs to keep their carbohydrates below 50 grams per day. But as I said, there's no weighing and measuring, and there definitely isn't. We are going to achieve this level of less than 50 grams simply by following the green and orange list, and this is exactly how it works. Now, your majority of your food, 85-90% of what you eat over the next 6 weeks is going to come from the green list. This is your go-to list. When you are putting a meal together, you should always start with this list, and the majority of the ingredients for your meal or for your recipe should come from this list. So what is on this list, the green list? Firstly, we have above ground veggies. Veggies that are low in carbohydrate. To get onto this list, these veggies must have less than 5 grams of carbohydrate per 100 grams. So if you look at the list, you'll see a little number next to each veggie, and that indicates the amount of carbohydrates per 100 grams. And you'll see that all of the ones listed on the green list are really low, less than 5 grams per 100 gram. Next on this list is animal protein, meat, chicken, fish, seafood, eggs. And you'll see in a minute how important protein is when putting a meal together. So the whole structure of a meal starts with the protein here on the green list. And I'll go through that in more detail in a second. Next on the green list is good quality fat. At the top, we see a list of pure fats, things like olive oil, coconut oil, animal fats, a variety of different fats. these are the fats that I want you to use and include, and don't get stuck just using one or two of these. Lots of variety is essential as well. And finally, the last little block on the green list are your high-fat dairy products that can be included in abundance, and this includes cream and cheese. So that's the green list for you. The next list is the orange list. Now you want to think about food on the orange list as being supplementary. The orange list is just there to give you a little bit more variety, variety of nutrients, variety of texture, variety of flavors. But you only want to consume things from the orange list in small amounts. So for example, we might take nuts and seeds and a handful of them and throw them into the salad. Or we might have a tray of veggies, and on that tray of veggies that we're going to roast, we've got a bunch of things from the green list like zucchini, cauliflower, broccoli, and then we might put a little bit of pumpkin. You might finish a meal and have a bowl of some berries with a bit of cream on it. So small amounts of things from the orange list is how the orange list comes into play. And then finally, we have the red list. And this list is to basically be avoided during the 6-week challenge. As we go through the weeks, I'm going to pick different components from this list and go through why we are avoiding these things, and there are reasons behind each and every one of these, and how they will negatively impact your health and your weight. But for the moment, I'm just simply saying anything on the red list, avoid. Okay, so now that we have our heads around which foods are acceptable, we want to think about how we are actually going to put a meal together. So this is your formula for putting a meal together. The first thing you're going to do is start with protein. In a typical Western diet, what do? We typically start with carbs. Think about breakfast. It's a bowl of cereal or a piece of toast. Lunch, it's a sandwich. We're always beginning our thought process with carbohydrates. We want to turn that around here. I want you to always think of your protein for the meal first. I'll come back to speak a little bit more detail about that in a second. Next, number 2 is we're adding veggies. Lots of variety, most of them from the green list. And then step 3, the final step, and this is the step that makes a few of us a little bit scared and that some people leave out, but please do not feel scared and please do not leave this step out, because it is not possible to remain on a low carbohydrate diet if you miss out this step, and that is adding fat. Make sure that you add a good amount of fat. So I'm sure the question that's sort of bottling around in your mind right now is, well, how much? How much protein? How much fat? And so in order to give you an idea around this, let's work through a couple of examples. So if we start with the veggie component, it is always important to add some fat to veggies. So for example, if you steamed your veggies, there's no fat in the steaming process, and so you might steam them a little bit and then toss them with some butter in a pan, or some ghee in a pan, or some coconut oil in a pan. So by that way, we are adding some fat. If you're having a salad, a garden salad, you want to make sure you made a dressing. There's recipes that I've sent out for that, or maybe just simply put some olive oil on top of it. You might add some avocado, a sprinkle of nuts and seeds, a bit of cheese. All these things are going to boost the fat content of your veggies. And so it is always important at every single meal that we add some fat to the veggies that we're having. Next, however, is your protein. And this, there's a little bit of variation here. So let's say you begin with a lean piece of protein, something like a chicken breast or a very lean fillet of meat with no fat whatsoever on it. You will then need to add a substantial amount of fat to this protein. And that could be, making a creamy mushroom sauce or a cheese sauce or a pesto style sauce with some pine nuts and olive oil. So we need to really add quite a significant amount of fat if we have a lean piece of protein. On the other hand, you might have quite a fatty piece of protein, like a marbled steak with a big chunk of fat, or lamb, like a lamb cutlet or a lamb loin chop, and it's got a big piece of fat on it, or maybe you're having chicken wings with the skin on it. Now, these types of proteins have fat with them already, and therefore the amount of fat that we need to add is minimal, and we might not need to add any fat at all. So I know that's not giving you an exact amount of protein and an exact amount of fat, and I will speak in more detail about these two at the coming workshops. But this is the general rule to get you started right now. If you have enough protein and enough fat in a particular meal, you will remain satiated, meaning you will not get hungry. You shouldn't even have thoughts of food for a minimum of 5 to 6 hours. So if you had a meal and then an hour or two later, you're already thinking about food, wanting to have something to eat, what that means is that your meal did not have a good enough level of protein and fat. So this is where trial and error comes into play. You then need to think back to that meal that you had. Maybe you just had 2 eggs and a bit of veggies tossed in a little bit of butter for breakfast this morning, and that was at about 8 o'clock, and now it's 10 or 10:30 and you're feeling hungry. Well, what you've got to do is you've got to go, okay, well, tomorrow for breakfast, if I'm feeling hungry when I wake up, I've got to add something more to that meal. So maybe I needed a bit of bacon or smoked salmon in there. Maybe I could have sprinkled some cheese on top of those veggies as well. How could I add some additional protein and additional fat? Now, if you eat too much protein and fat, it will make you feel sick. And so if you overdo it, it will be very clear very quickly. So finding that balance through trial and error is so important. I do not expect that you will get it right the first few times. Over the next few days, you will have to do some playing around to work out how much protein and how much fat you need. And this can change from day to day as well. And that's why listening to your hunger and responding accordingly is so important, because if we can do it at meals and then also eat only when we're hungry, we're going to be on the path of success. The other thing that can help you in putting meals together is using my recipes. Not only will they provide you with inspiration and ideas, but it will just show you how you might incorporate fat into meals. It can be quite a foreign concept for people thinking about how fat is going to be incorporated. So use the recipes to help give you those ideas and also inspire you to cook new and different things. And the recipes will keep coming every week. You'll get more and more recipes. The Facebook group is also a great place to look for additional recipes. Whatever you're looking for, just go to the search bar in the Facebook group. Maybe you want to do some low carb pizza, type that in, and you can be assured to find a stack of recipes under whatever heading you're looking. The last thing is the shopping list. Now you'll see on the green, orange and red list, it's your main ingredients here. The shopping list then brings in all those other little things that you'll be thinking about after this. So things like vinegars and mustards and herbs and spices and condiments. Everything else is on the shopping list. So if it's not on the green and orange list, check out the shopping list to see what mustards you can include, what vinegars you can, etc. And if you still can't find it, then of course ask the question in the Facebook group. But the shopping list is there to supplement the information on the green and orange list. So that is the bulk of the information on how to get started with your low carb challenge. There is one more part in the Workshop 1 series. So just to get that final picture of what's going on, please be sure to finish this series off and watch the final part, and you will be then ready to rock and roll. See you next time.